I've been a fan of the Halo books for nearly as long as I've been playing the games. I was about 10 years old when I first played Halo 3, and maybe about 12 when I read The Fall of Reach, and so the lore is a very important aspect of Halo to me. With that said, I'm over a decade older now, and I've read almost all of the Halo books that have released. One of my favourites, and one that I have used as source material for several of the videos that I've done, is Halo the Flood. This book is essentially a novelisation of Halo Combat Evolved with a few extra characters' perspectives thrown in there, such as the point of view from Melissa McKay, who is an ODST, and Zuka Zawami, who is an elite who made it his quest to hunt down Master Chief. And what I really liked about the book was how it went into detail about the missions from the first game, which makes everything really easy to visualise in your head while reading. And for a very long time now I have wanted a novelisation of Halo 2, but it just never came. Halo 2 is by far the most cinematic of all the Halo games in my opinion, and I also feel that it has not only the best, but the best told narrative in the series. It's a story that could be told in book form really well, and while 343 didn't answer my prayers, a writer named David Cameron has not only answered them, but he's gone well beyond with his fan novelisation of Halo 2 and Halo 3 called Halo Array. Now, what some of you might be thinking, is this another awkward and weird Halo fanfic, something that should be left to waste away in some far forgotten forum post? Well, no, because Halo Array is an excellent retelling, as I said, not just of Halo 2 but also of Halo 3. It's both games in one book. So going into it, I wasn't really sure what to expect other than the story I've played through many times in game form, but I did not expect to become so fixated on this book. Similar to how The Flood tells its story, Array goes into exquisite detail with each chapter, often being named after rally points you can load up in the game for different missions. It's largely faithful to what we have all played, although there is some clever author interpretation used in segments that are fun shooting galleries in the game, but might otherwise be boring if you was just reading it. The book avoids just being pages and pages of Chief shot this Covenant, reloaded a fresh magazine, etc, etc. There is some of that, but the book isn't completely filled to the brim with endless waves of combat. One of the ways the author avoids this is saving combat for more interesting segments of the story. For example, during Halo 2 when you crash land in Mombasa, in the game you would go into the courtyard, you'd end up fighting a few waves of Covenant, and then you'd fight a pair of hunters. In Array, the author writes so Chief does the speedrun skip, when you use barrels and other props in the sandbox to jump on top of buildings and skip the fight altogether. And it makes sense. The author rationalises this happening because A, time is of the essence to stop the Prophet of Regret, and B, it means no casualties are taken amongst the Marines, and you see a few more examples of this happening throughout the book. It helps keep the pacing at a steady pace, and you never are in the same place for too long. It never feels like the story is dragging along in any way. Instead, what you get is something more nuanced. The story is at many points emotional, it's action-packed, and when it needs to be, in some places it takes on like a form of horror story. The book never strides away from its source material. Everything in this book you would have seen in game or in one of the game's promotional material. It clearly gives names and personalities to many of the AI you see in the game, be it friendly or enemy, and makes it a point to make sure these characters reappear throughout the story. And I ended up forming a connection to these characters. I wanted to know what would happen to them and if they would survive. Their stories became as interesting to me as the Master Chiefs and the Arbiters. And I'll give you a few examples without spoiling it too much, but mind you, there will be some minor spoilers, but if you don't mind that, then continue to listen, otherwise you can just skip ahead to hear my verdict. So in Halo 2, when you're driving through the tunnels in New Mombasa, you eventually get to a Marine who hands you a shotgun. She says, "It's tight quarters on the other side, sir, use this," and she hands you a shotgun. Now in the game, she's just another friendly AI with a throwaway voice line used to hand the player a shotgun for some close quarters action. I personally interpreted this character as Corporal Palmer from the short story Palace Hotel. The author, however, interprets this character as Jane Pincotti. Now, Jane sticks with the Master Chief during this section of the story, but many chapters later, she makes a reappearance on High Charity. She is one of the captured Marines that you rescue in the level Gravemind. Now, in my own interpretation. I never considered that the Marines in New Mombasa would be the same ones fighting on and around Delta Halo, but I guess it makes sense if they were all deployed from in Amber Clad. In my video, Survivors of the Halo Trilogy, I made it clear that all of these Marines were dead by the end of the mission Gravemind or shortly afterwards. The author plays it out differently, and all the Marines survive with Chief as he rampages through the city. What's more, they and Jane are also still alive when the flood infested in Amber Clad crashes into High Charity. In fact, they're all still alive even when Chief leaves to go after Truth. And here he's given a tough choice on what to do with the Marines, but Jane decides for him. She says we'll stay behind because she doesn't want to leave her fellow soldiers who she's become separated from while they're trying to escape. Chief hands her the shotgun and he says, take this, it's close quarters on the other side, which to me is just brilliant because her encounters with Chief start and end with the same line. Not only do these interactions and the time spent with these characters add to the personalities of the Marines, but it does the same for the Chief. It really, really does its best to make sure, he really does his best to make sure they don't take further losses. Another set of characters introduced is Banyip and Tobap. These are a male and female grunts respectively. Their first chapter in the book is set between Halo 2 and Halo 3 during the live action trailer for Halo 3 called Landfall. I'm sure all of you remember this video. It involved Marines and ODSTs fighting off brutes as they try to get a laser mark on the Chief as he falls from orbit. While Banyip is deployed to the ground, Tobap is shot out of a side gunner position on a Phantom. Together the pair are the only survivors of this Covenant mission, and their journey takes them across East Africa and eventually they get taken to the Ark. And Banyip's tale is one of survival and misfortune, and as an educated grunt, he holds a higher position than most of his kind, but he keeps getting the short straw on assignments, so when fortune seems to be smiling at him, it's not long before it gets worse by simply being in the right place at the right time to only seemingly be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's quite cute, it's hopeful, but it's also humorous, and it just works, it's brilliant. One other thing I want to talk about that you don't see in the game is the horror perspective when facing down the flood, because in the games you're playing as a 7-foot tall Spartan in this power armor. It filters out all the toxic chemicals that the flood can throw at you, but it's different if you're just a regular Marine or just a regular member of the Covenant. I said the Marines that were on High Charity survived even when the flood arrived, and the description of what they're seeing and witnessing when they're all alone in the dark, the cold, dead Covenant city, is so creepy, yet it is so captivating. Now I don't want to spoil too much of what happens to all of them when they are in areas with they're in areas with no flood, but then they start to hear voices inside their heads, which they try to just brush off as stress, but what's actually going on is something so much more sinister. One of the Marines attempts to get the power back on in the same room in which we destroy High Charity's generators or engines in Halo 3, but the room is in total or near darkness, so the only way the Marine can safely navigate is through Cortana guiding the Marine. Cortana has a blueprint for the layout of High Charity, but she can't see the flood biomass that has quickly taken over the entire room. The Marine becomes incredibly scared, panicking to Cortana about how the air is making them cough, the ground is wet, the ground is slimy. Cortana tries to reassure the Marine, but their panic does not slow down, and Cortana is forced to use the Marine's microphone to hear the sounds of the flood biomass all around the Marine. If you want to find out what happens when that Marine puts the lights on, you just have to read the book, because it truly fleshes out the in-betweens of Halo 2 and Halo 3 in a way that is done carefully and in a way that it is deserved. So on the whole, I really enjoyed my time with Halo Array, and I can't see any reason why this would not fit into the rest of the canon universe, because the entire book is so lore friendly. There are a few minor gripes here and there, but they're so few and far between that they really don't take away from what this book has to offer you. There is so much more that I haven't told you about this book, because it would be a real shame if I was to spoil all the goodies before you get a chance to experience them for yourself like I did. Do I recommend this book? Absolutely. But who to recommend it for? Well, I believe that any avid Halo reader would enjoy this due to how well it ties into the events of the games, as well as some of the other books. A few events from past entries are referenced throughout, but I would also recommend it to someone who's yet to read a Halo book. If you have only played the games, I do think this would be a good place to start because everything will seem familiar to you as you read through it, but crucially, you're not going to get bored because it adds detail and personality where there was not much before. Now, unfortunately, you can no longer buy a physical copy of this book. That is for some legal reasons between the author and Microsoft. I won't get into it. But you can read it online for free, and I believe there are even instructions online for printing your own paperback, which if you could do, I would recommend, just because it'd be nice to have a physical copy in your hands. Now, I was lucky enough to get a physical copy before you wasn't able to buy them anymore. But if you can't get one, don't be discouraged. It's online, it's free, it's really, really good, really easy to read as well. Please go and give this read a chance. It is action-packed, emotional, and horrifyingly chilling is how I would describe this to any potential reader. But that's all I have for today. So if you did enjoy the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. But until next time, Spartans, this is Jack signing off.